Hello, welcome to Congressional Update with Michael Capuano. I'm Sarah Fishman. How are you doing, Mike?
Good, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, a little cold after being hot. We're going to start with what is Mike most pissed about today? The acronym for that is WIMPAT, just so you know. So is it A, lack of congressional authority for airstrikes in Syria, B, collection of information of IPS internet users, C, Neil Gorsuch going on to the Supreme Court, or D, something else?
Pretty much. You didn't give me all of the above.
Oh, I'm sorry. Or all of the above.
All of the above.
Okay, all right, so we'll try to hit some of those. The congressman just told me that there was a bomb dropped in Afghanistan, and I just heard about this, and he doesn't seem to be briefed on it quite yet either. So I just wanted to mention it because it's not something we can give detail on, but we wanted to acknowledge it. So let's start with where there's already been talk in Syria. So apparently there was an airstrike today as well against ISIS, but 18 Syrian fighters who were U.S. allies were killed. So, and that follows the airstrike several days ago against an airfield. So what's going on here? Do you know?
Apparently we're shooting at both sides of the, we're not sure whose side we're on. It's a mess. I don't know that it's true, but somebody the other day said there was 1,200 different factions in Syria. I don't know if there's that many. There might well be. I don't know. That seems a little ridiculous. But there's certainly 4 or 5 or 6, if not more. And I don't know whose side we're on. I know who we're against. Apparently it's everybody. But I don't know what our plan in Syria is. I don't know what we do the day after we succeed at whatever that plan might be. And I don't know what we are willing to do to achieve whatever goals we have. It's a complete blank box to me and everybody else I know.
And then this bomb that you mentioned in Afghanistan, that comes after a recent announcement that there would be 300 Marines going into Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's the thing that actually set me off several weeks ago when I heard there were going to be more Marines going in. Clearly an act of war. Clearly, as far as I'm concerned, you're into a sovereign country now. They have hidden behind the authorization of the use of military force for Iraq and terrorism by saying we're going after ISIS and that's a terrorist group. I've always thought that was a stretch, but at least they had...
This is the immediate post-9/11 authorization.
Yeah. And I've always thought it was a stretch of an argument, but if ISIS is the target, I guess you can draw lines to that direction. But when you start bombing the Syrian government, no matter how bad they might be, and they are bad, but when you start bombing a sovereign government, that's a lot different. The AUMF does not allow that as far as I can see.
What was that acronym?
The authorization of use of military force.
Okay. Huh. So...
And thank you for correcting me. I actually hate the acronyms. I don't usually use them.
Oh, okay. Well, I just didn't know what it was.
No, I'm glad you asked.
This is just very hard because it's a lot of moving parts, and I can't, like many people, figure out what's going on here. And is this the beginning of a world war? Is it?
I certainly don't think it's intended that way, and I don't think that's the case. But it runs that risk with Russia being on the field in Syria. Russia is a world power. I don't think they can withstand our military power, but that's beside the point. They are a world power no matter how you measure it. And do we really want to get into a shooting war with Russia, even if it's by accident?
Yeah.
And again, if we want to do that, I really think the American people need to be involved in that discussion. And obviously we have not had that discussion.
So there was some communications channel that got shut down that existed between Russia and us that I guess allowed people to say, well, we're about to do thing X. So what's the status of that?
I don't know. I mean, the Russians said they were shutting it down because, it's their retribution against us. We did notify the Russians that we were attacking this air base, and my understanding is they evacuated their personnel.
This is the one in Syria.
The one in Syria, the one that we sent missiles against. But they weren't terribly happy about it because it was a last minute type of thing, and they didn't think that's what the agreement was for, that notification agreement. And so they've shut down the process now so that even if we wanted to, we'd have a hard time notifying the Russians we're going to do this tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Some people said that Putin knew ahead that Assad was going to use sarin gas.
Yeah, that's
against-
a big question, and in theory, that's supposed to be being investigated now.
Right.
I don't know that that's known at the moment, so I'll leave it alone because I don't know.
And how come does it seem like there's been such a big shift from liking Putin on the part of our president to, at least publicly,
Well, I'm
not?
starting to get not necessarily used to it, but at least I'm starting to expect massive shifts from President Trump on pretty much everything. He shifted on that. He shifted on China. China was a currency manipulator during the entire campaign, and now apparently, according to him, they're not. He shifted on NATO. He
Yes.
shifted on healthcare. He shifted on every major issue that I'm aware of that we've actually dealt with since he became president. He shifted on, and look, I'm the guy. I've always understood and accept the fact that people change their minds on things. I get that, but on everything, and overnight, I just don't understand it. And I know that the president constantly says I don't want to tell anybody what I'm thinking or why I'm doing things. I get that to a certain extent, but I don't get it again on everything. It makes no sense, and it makes for untrustworthiness between allies.
What it makes, I think a lot of people think, is that he doesn't know what he's doing, and he knew even less coming into the job, because if, at the very least, you don't take a stance if you don't understand.
Yeah, but you know, and that's,
or is that rational?
No, well, that it is rational, but it's also, it's not how you get elected. Yeah,
Right.
You have to be elected. In order to get elected, many people think that they have to make outrageous statements during an election. You know, I try not to do that, but you know, many people think that's part of a successful formula, and that's clearly the formula that Trump pursued when he was a candidate. Every day there was another outrageous statement about something, and now that he's president, you know, I guess on some levels I'd be happier if he would take all of his outrageous statements and just put them on the shelf and be rational from here on out. Even if I disagree with them, at least
Right. Just so there would be some predictability.
some degree. And again, I
Yeah.
understand. I understand you don't want to tell the enemy what you're going to do next.
Right.
I get that, but that doesn't mean you're unpredictable on everything.
Yeah. So now he's taken Steve Bannon off of the Principals Council of the National Security Council, right? And he's put back the Joint Chiefs of Staff and other people who
Right.
were there before. And you had said in the past you were more upset with him taking away these other individuals than placing Bannon in there.
Yeah.
So I think some people thought when McMaster came in that there would be a greater, I don't know, stability to policymaking. And I mean, who authorizes this other than the president? Who is it?
Well, the president
is
authorizes it, period.
Defense Secretary Mattis?
No, it's the
or-
president. He's the one who makes those decisions. Obviously, I hope he does it with consultation with the people he trusts, but it's his decision. And we may end up with more stability, but in order to get from an unstable situation to a stable one, there has to be more instability. He has
Yeah.
to be able, and now
Yeah.
I don't know where we're headed.
Yeah.
We may be headed for stability, but we may not. We may be headed towards just a different person being unstable.
So what do you think is going to happen?
I don't have a clue. And I kind of laugh at no one seems to have a clue with what this administration is doing. So we'll see.
Ugh, it's just, it's very disconcerting at the very least.
I would say that's a good word.
All right, so now talking about the American people's view. So this is not a new theme for you, because you said this in 2011 about Obama bombing in Libya, that Congress has to authorize these war or warlike acts. That did not happen in this case. And can you talk about your legislation and the timing of it?
The legislation had nothing to do with the bombing. It had to do with the item you talked about before, the
Right.
Marines. The president had announced he intended to send 300, at least 300, maybe up to 1,000 more Marines into Syria for the purposes of overseeing the push against Raqqa, which is the capital of ISIS. And for me, the question is, when do we stop being advisors and become combatants? And I thought we had enough advisors, and again, nothing was explained, nothing, and so therefore I filed a piece of legislation with a Republican from North Carolina that basically says no offensive military action can occur in Syria without congressional authorization. That's all it says. It doesn't say whether you should or should not get that authorization. It just says stop, come to Congress.
And that was the day before.
It was the day before the bombing, and now the bombing
on the
obviously
airfield.
underscores the need for that even more. And again, I've said it publicly. I think if the president came to Congress, I think he would have the votes. It wouldn't necessarily be with my vote, but I think that
Well, you
he would
said
get
you
the votes.
might. I thought you said you might.
What I've said, as I say with everything, if the president, any president, wants
Mm-hmm.
to come and make an argument to me about whatever, I will try to keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And on this, I don't know enough to know how I feel about sending troops to Syria. My initial thought, I think, wouldn't be a great surprise, and my initial thought is probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't refuse to listen to the president, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't close my mind to it. I'd say, here's where I kind of start, but talk to me, convince me otherwise. Not a big deal. Maybe you're right. So, I don't know what I'd do. I'd lean against it, but I wouldn't make a final decision until I allowed the president and his advisors to convince me if that's what they wanted to do. Right now, it doesn't seem as though he has any intention of coming to Congress.
That's what I was going to ask.
And worse still, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't seem at the moment that Congress has any intention of forcing him to do so. And
Hasn't it been that way for a long time since?
Well, yes and no. I mean, Obama, when it came, he bombed Libya, but it was a relatively short duration. And then when he wanted to, when he was considering taking action in Syria, he was coming to Congress. He made an assessment that he didn't have the votes, so he stopped. And he
Right.
never did bomb Syria.
Right.
So a lot of people complaining are the very ones who would have voted against him, and I might have voted against him, but I'm not complaining about it. But I think he was going through the process, and because he didn't like the answers he was getting, he didn't do it. Now, I would argue that President Trump should do the exact same thing. Come to Congress, most of us will give you an open hearing. I actually think he would probably find enough people to support him.
What do you think Hillary would have done if she were president?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't like her comments right after he bombed. He said, I guess she basically said, good idea.
Yeah.
And again, for me, and she's not in a position to know what's going on the ground. She can't answer what the question is, what happens the day after.
Right.
Only the president can do that. So I don't know what she would have done, but had she done the same thing, I would be doing the exact same thing. Like you said, I sued President Obama on this when he did in Libya. We lost, but I tried, and I'll try again to get Donald Trump to do the right thing, which is come to Congress. And especially in this case, I actually think he would get the votes to do
Yeah.
it. But if he didn't, fine by me.
Yeah. Another element of unpredictability at the very least.
No president wants to come to Congress. I get that.
Yes.
Every president wants to be a little emperor. I got that. But that doesn't mean they should be allowed to do so.
So what about the investigation of Russia's involvement in the election and Representative Nunes absenting himself from that investigation? Do you have any thoughts on the validity of the accusation that Russia was involved?
Not all the details. I mean, look, I said before this investigation started that it was the wrong place to have it. I've been calling for an independent review no matter what. And if it's not going to be independent of Congress, then at least it should be made up of a bipartisan group of people doing the review. When I say bipartisan, I mean an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. I'm not looking to blame Donald Trump for anything just because he's a Republican. And I don't think they should be willing to defend him just because he's a Republican. I want the truth. And if the truth is he had nothing to do with Russia hacking into our thing, I may not like that answer, but if that's the truth, that's the way it should be. But I do think that having an independent, reliable investigation on the issue is critical for the American people. I think we want to know who's trying to influence our elections and who is helping them do it.
Yeah. I have to cheat and look at my notes.
Go right ahead.
Is there a coherent policy? You answered that. Oh, and NATO. So he had said previously that NATO, the president said that NATO was not.
It was
What did
obsolete.
he say? It was obsolete. But then he said more recently
Yesterday.
that they had changed or something like that?
Somehow they have miraculously changed, and now he has declared them not obsolete.
It's just very strange.
Again, I don't. I understand unpredictability on some circumstances. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
Why would you want to be unpredictable to our allies?
Yeah.
I think that's a very precarious position to put yourself in.
Do you know that NATO is adding a country? Do you know what it is?
No, they're always adding a country here and there.
Montenegro.
Montenegro.
Yes, small.
Good.
Okay. So, yeah, okay, so there are many things we don't know. All right, I want to switch to some domestic things. First of all, you've been having all these community meetings, and different people have been telling me different things, including people who work here in the communications office at the city. You had this streamed live on Facebook?
Yeah, we're doing
That's cool.
Facebook Live. Yeah, well, that wasn't my idea because I didn't know what Facebook Live was. I do now, but that came out of my staff, and I said, okay, sounds good.
This is a smart idea.
It was.
Yeah.
It's worked out. We've got a lot of kudos for it. And,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's why I have good staff, because they know certain
Do you know
they
how
know
many
some things more
people?
than I do.
Do you know how many people were watching?
I didn't check last night, but we've done 2. Last night was the 3rd. The 2 prior to that, the Somerville one, I believe, was the last I looked. It was like 17,000 people watched it online, and the Mattapan one we did 2 nights ago, 3 nights ago, whatever it was. It was the last I looked was about 8,000. I don't know. We did one last night in Randolph, and I don't know. I haven't looked at that yet.
I think that's very good.
Yeah.
It's a very good use of social media. Are you getting different types of questions from people, both in
Not
tone
yet. I
or
mean,
in
pretty much the same
substance?
types of questions in all 3 of the locations we've done. I have another one tonight.
Right.
A little different, but not much. I mean, in general, people are concerned. They're concerned about the same types of things: healthcare and Social Security and education and civil liberties and war and peace and tax. You know, the environment. You know, they ask questions in a different way, but in general, the issues. I can't say I've been surprised by the issues that have come up.
Yeah. All right, so we'll just mention that he has another one of these meetings, 6 p.m. tonight at East Boston High School, right?
That's right.
Okay. Is that the last in this series?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
You know, it's a rolling thing, so it's not really a series. We have a couple more places we have talked about it. I actually don't know where they are in the process. You know, part of it is scheduling, because I never know when I'm going to be home. I know, but I don't know exactly. And then getting my schedule in line with whatever facility might be available in
Right.
the neighborhood. So I actually don't know. This is the last one that we have set. There may be others after this.
Okay. So switching a little bit, but staying on communications, because you were very vocal about this. Can you explain the nullified rule on internet service
Sure.
provider data use?
It's actually a very simple rule to explain.
Okay.
At the end of the Obama administration, they finally adopted a rule at the FCC that internet service providers, and most people, including me, I didn't know what that meant. What that means, that's your Comcast, your Verizons, your AT&T, the people that you buy the service from. It is not the Googles and the Yahoos who you go to their
It's the
website.
broadband or the...
Right. You need to get onto Comcast or whoever in order to get to Google.
Right.
Those are called internet service providers because that's what they provide you. They provide you your television. They provide you your Wi-Fi, whatever it might be. We had a rule that basically said they were not allowed to gather our information and sell it. And the Congress just repealed that rule, which is stunning to me, because what it allows, again, I don't want to pick on Comcast, but that's my company, and Verizon, AT&T, all these guys. It allows them to gather every bit of information, every keystroke you make on the internet, and then sell it if they choose to. And it sounds great if you're shopping for shoes. Who really cares? First of all, I care because it's none of your business what size shoe I take. But
I believe the example you used on the floor was underwear.
It's
just so people
because
know.
that most people shoes I actually like to try on.
Yes.
Underwear. Everybody knows their size of underwear. You know what you like, and you don't need to try them on. Matter of fact, you can't try them on. So on the internet, it's just as good as going to a store. It's just easier. But it's not just that. I mean, that's kind of it's not silly, but it's a little bit of a way to say
It's that
everything about
intimate.
you. It's that,
yeah.
and it's way more than that. every one of us has, a child, a spouse, or a parent or a sibling that has gotten sick, and you go home, and yourself. I'm still getting over that cold that everybody seems to have, and doctor gives me some medicines. I don't know what they are. I go home,
Yeah.
Google away, and why should you know what medicines I'm taking? Why should you know? You should know. Why should you know my children's medicines?
So now that's
If your child comes home and your child is diagnosed as having ADD or whatever, anything, now, and you Google it to see, well, what does ADD mean, and what's the treatment, and what are the symptoms, and what drugs do you take for it? Why should they know that?
Yeah.
And then, by the way, even passwords. I have one of those password keepers that I keep because I
Yeah.
can't remember all my passwords.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but when I type my password into that password keeper, it travels through my internet service provider.
Right.
They can capture it. They have every one of my passwords. Why should they have that in order to
Yeah.
sell it? And I have not found anybody who thinks this is a good idea. And yet,
So why did it
Republicans-
happen?
Because it happened. It was a fastball. It was right after the health care vote. It passed the Senate without almost any debate, and it came to the House, and it was again a fastball. There was some debate. It was the first time America really paid attention to it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to take some credit for that. I think that the video, my speech on the floor, the video
It was
that
very
finally-
funny.
It was. I did two of them, and they were funny, but they were serious.
Yes.
And
The
it struck a
topic.
chord with the average American. And,
Yes.
and the first video, got over 4.5 million hits.
Oh my goodness.
And I didn't check the second one. The second one probably got not quite that many, but quite a few. And only because, again,
It hits everybody.
it hits, and
Yeah.
if you speak in English, not in terms of it's an ISP with an ROI, when you say this is what it means,
Yeah.
why would you do that? Why
Yeah.
would you want, why would anybody allow, why would I want anybody to get your information?
So it's just some sort of general deregulatory.
It's that, and it's
effort.
money. The internet service providers, the whole reason that they want this is so that they can take that information and then sell it. So
Yeah.
now they can sell it to, they can sell my underwear information to the underwear company so I can get ads.
Right,
Hey, Mike,
right.
we have, green underwear in your size and, great price. Like, it's none of your business. I don't need it. Hey, Mike, we understand you saw a mental health provider last week because you Googled it. And by the way, we have drugs for that too. Here you go.
Yeah.
Here's my advertisement. I'm sorry. I have.
I've gotten ads like that.
We get them
Yeah.
in general, but not
Yeah.
in specific, and that's what this is all about. So
Yeah.
that the companies can make billions of dollars selling your information for purposes of advertising. Plus, there's probably a lot of other things they can do with that information that I don't even understand.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to talk about intrusiveness in another instance. So you were on the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and the Subcommittee on Aviation. And we were talking about this before the show. Overbooking on United. This Dr. Dow was pulled forcibly from the plane. He was bleeding from the lip. What went wrong there? And
Everything
is there anything that your committee or
could do, yes. Will do, probably not.
what could be done?
We could regulate overbooking. I don't think overbooking should be allowed, personally. And even if we allowed it, there should be rights to people. What's the process? Right now, it's up to the airline to make a decision what they're going to offer you if they want to bump you, how that bumping happens. I mean, let's be honest. The airline never should have let people they were going to bump onto the plane. That's
There were
just
so many
asking
things that
for trouble.
it seems like there were so many points where there could have been a better decision made than the one that
100
was
different-
made.
and this is going to cost United. It's already cost them billions of dollars of market value. Their shares
Yeah.
have gone through the floor. But it's going to cost them a lot of money in court, and they know it. I mean, not just for him. Half the passengers on that plane are going to claim, "Oh, I'm traumatized by the whole thing."
I bet they were though.
Sure,
I would have
I
been.
was surprised. When I've watched the video like everybody else. I want to know. I can't believe they haven't found the guy who was sitting right in front of him in the orange shirt, because he gets kind of sat there calmly during the whole thing, and he wasn't videotaping or anything.
I
It's
didn't see him.
I'd love to know what's going through your mind.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting how many people. It tells you something about society today. How many people pulled out their cell phone in a blink to get this video? I
Right.
mean, there have been several of them posted from different angles and
Yes.
different people. Anyway, it's going to cost United a lot of money, and a lot of
And
business.
I guess United had a rule, or in general they have rules. internal rules saying we don't break up family members, but I believe his wife was on the plane and they
Yeah.
weren't asking to bump her, and
Yeah.
yet they were dragging him out.
Yeah, they broke
That
every
just
rule in the
doesn't
book.
make
and
sense.
I don't know enough about United's policies. I just know that I actually don't think it's a real problem for Congress to come up with a passenger bill of rights that actually works.
Yeah.
We did it a little bit when it came to how much time you were allowed to wait on a plane on a tarmac.
What is it now? Is it like 4
A
hours?
couple hours. No, 2 hours. I don't remember exactly. A couple hours, but there's a limit.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here. I'm not looking to interfere with every
Right.
single decision, but there should be some limits. I would argue one of those limits is once you're on the plane, in your seat, they can still offer you money. That's fine, but they can't drag you off.
Yeah, anyway, that was just very hard to watch. Let's see, what else? So many other things. Okay, so now we have a new Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch. Do you know how old he is?
49.
He's 49. That means he could be on there
A long time.
a long time. And do you know this guy, Leonard Leo, who's head of the Federalist Society? So he apparently is one of the Trump judicial nominee operatives, and he's very influential in culling conservative judges, and he's very anti-abortion. He has 6 kids. He had a 7th who died as a young teenager of spina bifida, and I believe one of his other children also has that disease. And he just is very sanctity of life oriented. So my question was, if Gorsuch was one of his picks and is representative of future people he would promote, how long will Roe v. Wade remain on the books? That's the question to you.
I don't know if it's one of his picks or not. Look, I wasn't a supporter of Gorsuch. I wish he hadn't been appointed. But at the same time, he was replacing Antonin Scalia.
Yeah.
It's not going to change much because Scalia was pretty hard right-wing judge. I'm sure there were some votes that we would have agreed on the substance, but there were many more that he and I would disagree on. So that doesn't really change the balance of the court. For me, the question is, who's the next one?
Right, exactly. Well, and that's what I'm asking, because this is predictive, perhaps, of...
I think it's very predictive, and just statistically, the judges that I would tend to agree with more than not, they're the older ones. And then I will give the right-wing Republicans credit. They are pretty good at selecting young, hard right-wing judges who statistically will live longer and serve on the court forever. Gorsuch being a classic example. He looks older than 49, but when I looked it up, to be perfect, that's how I knew it, because I said, I don't know how, I have no idea. He's in that age group, you really can't tell. And even I was a little surprised at how young he was. And not that 49 is young, but it's younger than I think is...
It's like half the age of a lot of justices.
Yeah, exactly, and it's problematic. It means he could be spending 30 years or more on that bench, and in the entire time being, I don't know what he'll be, but I think the other side is hoping he's a hard right-winger.
On that note, we need to end. This has been Congressional Update with Michael Capuano. Have a good day.